Today I got Coach Hines with me. Coach Hines is the head coach of the Coronado Islanders. Most of you probably know Coach Hines from his various culture and inspirational videos that he does all throughout social media. You can find Coach at Coach Kurt Hines on Twitter. Coach, thanks for joining me.
I appreciate you having me on. It's a blessing to be here.
And I kind of want to get straight into what we were talking about before I turned this on, and that was we both coach by military bases. We have kids that are military kids. You were by a naval base. I am by an Air Force base. And we had an interesting chord there right before I turned this on, and that's how it affects culture. With kids, I mean, you might have a kid a year, you might have them 2 years, you might have them 6 months. How does that affect culture? And that doesn't really get talked about by our community.
Yeah, no, great question. This is my 23rd year coaching high school football. The first 19 years or so, give or take, if my math is right. Prior to moving out here, I coached in New Hampshire, and always at whether it was kind of a suburban community or a more of a northern woods community. The kids stayed in your program unless they transferred to a private school. And that very rarely happened. And I was a firm believer back then that if you build something special, they'll stay. I still believe that, but there's a big asterisk next to that because now coaching in Coronado, where we have the naval base, as you and I touched on, you'll have families move in and move out because of the mother or father's assignments. And I was guilty of thinking that culture was something that a head coach believed in, built, presented to his staff and the team. And, it starts at the top, it kind of goes down to the bottom, then really grows back up from the bottom. Now that I've been here at Coronado, I've realized that culture is it's that, but it's not that and then slapping a slogan on a t-shirt or in the weight room wall or the locker room. It's a living organism. It's always changing and evolving and growing. And just like we have to meet the needs of our team by running an offense or a defense that fits the student body we have and tailors to the athletes, culture, there are certain things that hold true as far as what we believe in. But culture is, as I said, a living organism. We had a starting quarterback 2 years who was a very good quarterback, a stud safety as a junior. And then we finished that season. He came to me about 2 months later with tears in his eyes and said that they were moving back to where they just came from because his father was transferred for the Navy. So it's always a blessing when you have military families, in my opinion, as part of your football family. It's also a great challenge because that revolving door can drive you to go insane sometimes.
Oh, I agree. Like we already know we're losing one of our freshmen after this season. He found out, I think it was like very early of August, um, and they're transferring to Virginia after this year. Like it just that's just what's going to happen. And the sad thing is, like I mean, he probably even though he's a freshman now, as a sophomore, junior, senior, he probably would have definitely played special teams next year and probably rotated in some spots. Like I mean, he and what's probably even more hurtful than the fact that you're going to lose him as an athlete is him and his family are great culture kids. Like they're very good community based. They're very supportive. He's a very well disciplined kid academically and socially. Stays out of trouble. Like unfortunately, you lose the kids that you don't want to lose, and it's not just from an athletic standpoint. You're looking at like, oh crap, I just lost somebody that could be a leader in that class. Like that, like just a natural leader. Like and
Yeah,
you know what I do. Like there's always that conversation. Can you teach leadership? And yes, you can. But some people in my personal opinion, are just natural. They have a tact for it. They just have the person. Probably the personalities. Probably like as what I do. There are those people that light up a room immediately. They're in the room. You know who they are. They stand out, and that's. I mean, it sucks when you lose those type of kids.
it really does. We had a young man, my first year as head coach, who the staff that was here that I inherited uh, 3 years ago. I'm heading to my fourth year as head coach here. Said, hey, we had this young man who was a captain as a junior, and that blew me away. And I always love that. I'm not a believer that captains have to be seniors. Come to find out, his older brother was a captain 2 times over, junior and senior year. So this young man was, and his younger brother was going to be a sophomore in our program this year, but father, military, had to get transferred down to Providence, Rhode Island, where I grew up, which is funny, but or Newport, Rhode Island. And he's one of the young men you're talking about, Coach. Just a potentially great player, but he's an even greater young man. Just a great, selfless, team-first player. But that's one of the things, I think as coaches, it's forced me, coaching here on the island, to practice even more what I preach. Because we always talk to our players about being adaptable and controlling the controllables and all those, however you want to say it, but, being flexible. And now it's like, wow, I can sit here and cry and moan about players we lose, or continue to pour into every young man or young woman in our program and make sure that whether someone moves or not, that we're ready to go in all facets of the game.
Oh no, I agree 100%, and you gotta cherish, I think, the time you have with those kids before you lose them too. We fortunately were given a heads up that we were going to lose them, quite a bit heads up. But it's like, okay, so how can I help him in the next 6 to 8 months before they do transfer? And I think that's where part of our community occasionally gets lost. Oh, he's going to transfer. I'm not going to necessarily put as much time and effort into it when it should be the opposite. You have him 6 to 8 months now. You should put more into him. Give him the tools to see the when he leaves, because God knows what he's going to go to. I don't know what situation. And I hope it's, and I knock on wood, I hope it's a great situation. But
sorry, I think I froze there. You froze for a second. Apologize. I was just saying, I agree with you to continue to pour into them even more. And I think it's powerful also when they do move, after a month or two, reach out to them. Yeah. Realizing and helping them realize we have nothing to quote unquote gain by doing this, but just continuing to pour into them and being there for them, I think speaks volumes of who we want our young men to be and who we are as coaches.
I agree 100%. Now I want to move on a little bit too, because we are both in kind of little different situations right now. My state, Ohio, is playing in the fall and trying to navigate this horrid thing that is COVID, and unfortunately, I've not had as much luck as I've wanted to this year with it. But that is what that is. Go back to control the controllables. How are you, given the fact that you guys don't play till the spring right now, how are you maintaining culture? How are you still connecting with your kids, given the array of it's not football season until the spring?
Yeah. So in California, we're scheduled to kick off our season on December 12th. And the first thing we did, my coaching staff and I, is made sure I had a bad habit my first few years as head coach back in New Hampshire, where I tried to do everything. And not only can I not do everything, but that's why we have a coaching staff. You want to make sure you delegate and also empower your coaches to know that they are valued members of that team. So I reached out to every member of our team, coaches and players first. But then I realized I was kind of slipping back into, hey, let me take care of everything. And I can't, and that's not what I want. So we had a virtual coaches meeting, and one of my assistant coaches, who is just an amazing man and coach and just salt of the earth person, he divided our team up into our players into different teams, if you will. So each coach had a group of players to reach out to. And I made sure I asked them, I said, when you reach out to them, I said, please do not let that first conversation be about football. Just ask them about life. Ask them how they're doing. Because for some people, this COVID thing, for me personally, without getting political, it's annoying. That's it. Yeah. My wife, we have our jobs. We haven't lost any income. We're not fighting. We have our health. But for other people, there's a lot of anxiety, and there's depression, and there's job loss, and divorces, and all that stuff. So the first way to maintain that culture and continue to build it was just to be there for each other. We're allowed now to be back with our teams twice a week. We're still social distancing, and we're still, coaches are wearing masks, and the players are 6 feet apart and all that. Can't be in our weight rooms yet. But I think a lot of that is just continuing to be there by calling players, texting them. I try to reach out to at least 3 players after every practice, whether it's a phone call or a text, and just give them some constructive feedback, whether it's phenomenal job competing today or, hey, to watch your cuts or whatever it is on a certain route. But I think now is a greater time than ever as coaches to let our young men and their families know that we don't see them as players. We see them as people who also happen to play for us.
Well, yeah, I agree 100%. Like, we unfortunately, one of our tight ends suffered what I would define as a catastrophic knee injury this year. Um, and
Sorry to hear that.
I mean, I heard it pop from 30 feet from the sideline, 30 feet away from him. So it was bad. But again, I messaged him today. Not one thing about football. I was like, how's your knee? How's your family
Yeah.
doing? Do you need anything? Keep us posted. When are you starting rehab so we can take care of you? Like, I mean, and that's
And
it.
that's
Good
that's
coach.
huge. And you know that, and obviously this is why you did it because it was on your heart. But how many times do we hear stories about players, and I'm talking from youth all the way to the highest level of NFL, NBA, whatever it is, that once they were injured, the coaches acted like they had the plague. They just walked right
Oh yeah.
past them, or and that's horrible. So I mean, I feel weird saying good on you for doing that, but really,
Oh yeah.
I think that's a lost art in some ways.
Yeah, and I think that's what people admit. Like, it's a difficult time. So you're factoring in COVID and a lot of other personal things he's dealing with right now, on top of a bad knee injury. That I mean, he'll be lucky to play his junior year right now. In my opinion, I mean, I hope I'm wrong, and he's back in time. But I mean, the rehab's going to be tough. But yeah, and I think that again, this part is why I wanted this conversation with you is because there's a lot of things that get lost when as coaches when we get in the thick of it. Like
Yeah.
the focus goes in a lot of directions: the season, scouting, depth charts, maintaining your culture. But a lot of times you forget about the extra stuff that needs done. Okay, the constant communication, the constant "how are yous," the injured players who need the support, the backups who need to know you still care that maybe not get a lot of reps that week, um, and stuff like that, and even I think communication with the other sports, and that's kind of why I want to ask you about you because I don't know I don't watch everything you do obviously, but um,
I don't blame you. I don't either.
but how do you work with other sports to maintain because I need to tread lightly with how I word this.
No, please don't. Please don't. Please don't. Don't try that way.
Obviously, your program has a culture. How do you maintain that culture when they go to other programs, and how do you maintain communication with other sports in your school?
Yeah. We don't have players on our team that play other sports. I don't let them. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. No, there's so many things my mind's racing to now because one of my
Yeah.
biggest pet peeves in the sports world is, and I might rub some people the wrong way here, and I won't word this carefully, but personally, I think it's either ignorance or selfishness when coaches tell players to just play one sport.
I agree 100%.
We had a young man last year, matter of fact, that came out first time to football, started for us on both sides of the ball. His father played baseball and college at the University of Arizona. Passed away just about a year ago from a brain tumor. Had also played for the Padres. And this young man just wanted to do something his father had done. He'd never played football. This kid is a stud. And he's not playing this year. He's not playing football. And he apologized to me. And I said to him, I won't say his name, but I said, don't worry about it. I was like, listen, it's a blessing to know you. He and I will continue this relationship, for God willing, as long as we're alive. I think one of the things to continue your culture is to let your players know and have those conversations with them and say, if you are passionate about other sports, please play other sports. And there are some kids I never see in the weight room, and I am 100% fine with that. As passionate as I am about our strength and conditioning program, because they're playing other sports. And I said, if you're a 3-sport athlete and you love that, then pour your heart into that. And during basketball season or baseball season or lacrosse or whatever, don't think about football. Be where your feet are. Enjoy that. And I think the communication is going to come, having those conversations also with other coaches. I won't mention the sport or the coach's name, but there's a coach here on the staff, not for our football program, but at Coronado High School, who says all the right things to the parents. And to me, he says, oh, yeah, he wants them being multi-sport athletes. But I've had so many players come up to me and say, Coach, that's not what he tells us during practice. He tells us that we don't show up to these off-season workouts. We don't, and I hate that. I don't hate the man, but I hate the fact that he's sending that message. I think one of the greatest things about culture, and it depends on what your culture is. We all have different cultures. We all have an idea of what's most important to us. If and I don't want to get preachy here, but my number one reason for coaching, as much as I love the sport, I love the violence of it. I love the game planning, the chess match, the training, the film study. My number one reason for coaching is to empower other people. And if that's really what it is, then I should pour into them whether they're in the weight room or not. I should pour into them and support them whether they're playing football on our JV program or varsity program. And I think you maintain that culture by continuing to be there for your young men and young women, whether they're playing another sport or not. Now, my concern is when you have a player that doesn't show up to off-season workouts and you know they're just at home on the couch or playing video games or hanging out with their buddies. And then I've seen coaches, I've seen the best of the best, and I've seen the worst of the worst, coaches that berate the players publicly and embarrass them and tell them they're not committed without ever taking the time to get to know why they're not there. Because some players don't want to play at the next level. Some players don't care if they really start. They want to play football during football season, and that's it. And shame on me if I don't accept that and meet them where they are and say, hey, I'm going to help you as much as I can. Realize if your goal is just to be part of the program, that's great. I'm going to support you. If your goal is to start, then you got to put in a little bit, extra. I think the culture is an interesting thing, but the biggest thing for me with culture is we have to practice what we preach.
Mm-hmm.
If we want players that are selfless, team-first players, we have to be selfless coaches that are player-driven and supporting them to be other things than just football players.
Okay. Now, do you intentionally or try to get coaches from other sports to be on your football staff to help build a school-wide culture?
Yeah. Yes. I do. Matter of fact, I was spoiled my first stint as a head coach in New Hampshire. I had two of my assistant coaches were head track coaches. One was the head girls track coach. One was the head young men or the men's track coach, boys track coach. I think there's so much beauty in that because it does allow for crossover for players to get to see coaches in different lights. I think it's powerful. I think when you get coaches that have different backgrounds and are coaching different sports, the biggest thing for me, Coach, is I do the strength and conditioning with our guys year round. I know a lot about strength and conditioning. There's a lot I don't know. I'm not an expert by any stretch of the imagination. But for me, it's because, as you know, when you're in practice, you have a practice plan and it's down to the minute. 10 minutes for stretching. By the end of the season, I want to have that stretching down to 8 minutes. I want to be efficient with it and just, whatever. And you can communicate and get to know your players a little bit during the season. But for me, it's during the off season when I can say, hey, Scott, John, whoever, I'm going to work out with you guys today. And you really get to work out with them and get to know them and build those relationships. When you have coaches on your staff that coach other sports also, it allows those players to see those coaches not just 3-4 months out of the year, but 6, 7, or 8 months out of the year to really build those relationships.
And speaking of kids seeing you, how often are you at other events? And I'm not talking just events your kids are at. I'm talking school events just in general.
Yep. I'm going to be very transparent here. Not as often as I should be. Not as often as I should be. And I don't know how I feel about that, to be honest. And the reason is family. For me, family comes first. Whenever I've been a head coach, I've always made sure that we never have coaches' meetings on Sundays. And that's not knocking coaches or staffs that do. It's just for us, we've been able to find success, great success. And we've lost a lot of games throughout all the years I've coached, but we've also won a great number of championships and whatnot. It's about balance and making sure that you don't put your family on the back burner. I do try to get to some lacrosse games, some baseball games, some basketball games, rugby tournaments, soccer games. So I go to a few. Okay. But there's no doubt there are coaches out there that go to more than I go to. I'm not saying from our program, but throughout the state or country rather. But I really try to balance it. I've got to be home with my family, and I don't say I've got to, like it's a obligation. I want to be around with my wife, my kids, and my grandsons, and sometimes they'll come with me and go to different events to support. When our kids were younger, my wife and I would often take the whole family out for a date night, and what that meant was the first half we're going to a sporting event, and then we'll go out to dinner or something. So we made it work.
There you go, Coach. Good. And next thing I want to talk to you about is a little about mental health real quick because I think that all of us have kind of been affected with this. How how have you dealt with the rigors of obviously the I mean, obviously you're home with your family still, but being isolated, and then how have you kind of helped your players through being isolated in this kind of weird? I don't even know what to call this anymore because kind of like you, I'm annoyed by it, but it's obviously everybody's affected a little differently. But how have you been able to maintain somewhat of a healthy mental health during this and help your players maintain it?
Yeah, we have the one word answer is why. WHY. My first year as head coach here, I left a program not that I built, but that the coaches, the players, the families, and I built back in New Hampshire, where we had 144 young men in our program, and we built a powerhouse. I came here to Coronado my first year as head coach. I was an assistant at a different program for 2 years, but I came here and we lost our first game my first year as head coach. And it was kind of like all right, let's get back in the bus. Like no one cared. So we had, I won't bore you with all the details, but we had a team meeting the following morning, Saturday morning. And I told the team, now my coaches knew what I was doing, but I get really emotional when I'm with my team. I get animated. I don't swear. I yell a lot, but not derogatory. But I went into that team room and I said, I'm done. I said, I told the administration I'm done, but I figured I owed you guys, to say it to your face, I didn't move here to be a part of a team that doesn't care. And you could see just the shocked look in their face, like, wait a minute. Our head coach just left after losing one game. Like, what's going on? And I walked out of the room and it was dead silence. And I look back at it now and I'm like, thank God they didn't start cheering because that would have been tough to walk back in. But I went outside in the hallway and about 5 seconds later I walked back in and I said, imagine if I was serious. And you could see them looking around like, wait, what's going on right now? And I told them, I said, guys, the only reason I left Bedford, New Hampshire, the only reason was because of family. My wife and I had our first grandson and that was our why. And I said, you guys have to find out what your why is, what your strength is, what gets you up every morning and makes you be the man or woman that you are. So as far as mental health, for me personally, my faith is everything to me. That's what gets me through everything. That's not the case for everyone. And I've met some really strong people who don't have a belief in God or a faith, but they have another why or whatever it is. So I think the important thing here for mental health is, as a coach, as you mentioned, this whole thing is really annoying to me now. Really annoying. For some of the families, it's not. It's completely different. They see this all differently, as we all do. And I have to be careful. I think we as coaches have to be careful not to impose our feelings on our players and try to get political with them or persuade them to feel a certain way, but to love them enough to be transparent with them, tell them how we feel. But then for me to shut my mouth and listen and just ask them how they feel and have those conversations with them. We had a great conversation after practice this past Wednesday with our players. We're all in different groups and we can't share groups yet. So I have 5 different coaches with 5 different groups and we're doing all that. But at the end of every practice, I speak to each group. And I reminded them that the only thing they do when they come to practice is get better than themselves. They're missing the whole point of being student athletes, of being a team player. I said, you've got to try to make it a goal to make a teammate, at least one teammate better also. And talked about the importance of connecting and reaching out to teammates. Because you know this as well as I do. In the sports world, those teams that are powerhouses are strong, masculine, whether it's male or female, whatever. And they're just powerful teams. And that's a dangerous thing sometimes because I think true strength comes in being transparent. Saying, hey, right now I'm struggling. Right now I'm hurting. Right now I need someone. And I think it's important as coaches to be there for our players and encourage them to be there for each other.
Okay. I think the last question I have for you, because I've always wondered this before we stop and we go both try to enjoy our weekends with our families. I've always wondered this about you, and this is where I would be blunt. Why have you decided that you wanted to be one of the coaches at the forefront of just general issues? Because that's just the blunt statement is, if there's a problem in our coaching world, I will guarantee that Coach Hines has a video expressing his opinion on it, and some people will like it, some people won't, and that's a whole nother conversation. And it's I would argue it takes courage, and you're probably going to tell me it doesn't. But why have you chosen to try to be on the forefront of things and help, at least in some form or another, induce positive change just in general?
No, I appreciate that. You know, it's funny. You're right. Some people definitely do not like the stuff I put out there. But I do agree with you. I do think it takes courage. But it goes once again back to my why. I don't believe that I was put here on this earth. I don't believe any of us were to just meet the status quo and just agree with everything and just kind of go under the radar. I think in order to be great in life, and that goes back to how we define greatness, we have to be able to stand up and voice our opinions, whether people agree with it or not. I think the world is overpopulated, and we see this now more than ever in the political world, both sides, with people who will spew negativity and hate. And I have an opinion on everything. I don't have an answer for most things, but I have an opinion on everything. And I used to say this jokingly, but the more I heard myself say it, I'm like, no, really, that's me to a T. I am an expert in nothing, truly, but I'm passionate about almost everything in life. I think when our days are over, I want to be able to look back and be like, you know what, love me or hate me, I passionately try to serve others. And I didn't ever make a conscious decision to say, hey, I want to be one of the coaches in the forefront. But I also, at the same time, realize for all of us, as coaches, we have a platform that is powerful. Both you and I are school teachers, and we love our students, and I'm sure many of our students, most of them love us, but they have to be in our class. In the country, in the United States, they have to have some sort of formal education, whether it's public school, private, homeschooling. Our players don't have to come out for football. And for the players that parents say, hey, you have to do something, they could choose a much easier, with respect to other programs,
Yes.
a much less painful sport to play. We have a platform where I know sometimes I'm saying the exact same thing that a chemistry teacher, an English teacher, mom, dad, or a pastor or a preacher is saying. But because Coach Hines said it, they're going to take it as gospel, And so I don't think I'm special. I don't think I'm or any more special than anyone else. I want to use my platform to be a light to someone else. And as corny as that, and I know people have said to me, Coach, the number of times that, and I'll make this quick. I don't want to go on too long. But the number of times that people have said to me, stick to coaching. And then the first, maybe about 5 years ago, give or take, was the first time I got a private message on Twitter said, stick to coaching. Love your stuff, but I'm going to keep following you, stick to coaching. That was the first time I thought to myself, I was a little hurt, and shame on me for being hurt. I'm a grown man. I'm like, really? I'm some complete stranger. And then I thought to myself, all right, well, really, what's my goal? Do I want to be able to, on my deathbed, say, I had this many followers, or say, hey, I changed that many lives?
Yeah.
So I'll stick to coaching and just talk about coaching, which I'm not an expert in either. Or I'm going to stick to my heart and love me, follow me, hate me, block me, whatever you want to do. But we started about this off camera. You were talking about some player asked you about getting a car or something or financing something, and they were kind of laughing at you or with you about how excited you got.
Oh yeah,
that's passion. And that player, that student of yours, I'm guessing seriously probably talked to mom or dad or a girlfriend or someone or a boyfriend, someone about that, and was saying, oh my gosh, Coach Bandstra's eyes just lit up. He could talk about that forever. And that might make an impact in their lives forever. Well, so, it's the same with coaching and sharing, from our platforms.
Exactly. And like I said, when I share that story, it's like, I get excited about stuff like that and just talking about car insurance with kids just because I'm trying to help them be financially stable, and that's what gets me I don't want, because ironically we're on budgeting right now in personal finance. That's one of the classes I teach, and I spend probably longer on budgeting than I do anything else. And I start every year I start off with, my goal is, if you learn anything in this class, it's how to budget, because if you know how to budget, there's a good chance you won't be living paycheck to paycheck, and that is my at minimum goal for each of you. Is that you're not living paycheck to paycheck and have to experience what I've had to experience before. I don't want kids to go through that, and that's why, like, when we talk, and we're not even on car insurance or renting a car yet, but when a kid asks me about it, it's like, yeah, here's how you go it. Like, here's the things you need to realize in terms of, and I'm going on just down a rabbit hole now, But like, here's where the color of your car matters, your age, your sex, your how far you're driving from home to work, the miles per like how all this, how much your loan is matters on your insurance, and it's just that's where they're ooh. And then you see the girls get really depressed when you tell them that the bright red car is probably the most expensive things you can buy, and you just see
and we'll get you those tickets.
yeah, and they just go here. I'm just like, sorry, like if you want to pay for it, if a car is your thing, have at it. That's why I tell them. But you need to be realistic. You're gonna be paying an arm and leg for that bright red sports car. It's just.
Well, yeah, and it's true too, Coach, because there are so many people who check in as teachers, every profession, coaches. They punch that time clock, figuratively or literally, and they just do their job and get done. And probably once again for that student of yours that had you, that just the excitement, I can see it through the video here talking about that. They may never remember the exact words you said, but the excitement and the time that you took to teach them, that's huge.
Yeah, that's yeah, and those teachers that just do the punch card drive me insane, and that's a whole nother. Especially since, I mean, for this year I was driving an hour home and an hour back, so 2 hours a day for teaching and coaching. So like, and when you're at the school building from 4:30 a.m. to 7 p.m. like, because you're trying to help kids, it drives you insane when somebody just I get here 2 minutes after I was supposed to, and I leave 2 minutes before. It's like, yeah, that's great. Don't complain to me ever.
Right.
Do not like. It's not. I mean, if you're in our profession, just take a paycheck. That's a whole other issue. Because
my wife for years, and she's my best friend, biggest supporter. Been married for 26 years. She sat down one time, probably about 15 years ago, and looked at what I made coaching and the hours spent year round.
Oh, bad choice.
And she said, "You realize you make it was something like 18 cents an hour." And I said, "Jill, you realize I don't do it for the money." And she's a huge supporter of it, and she loves it, almost as much as I do. But you're right. If you're doing this for the money, you are. And I don't care if you're in Texas, if you're a collegiate professional. I don't think you're going to last. And that probably applies to most things in life, most careers. If you're in it just for the money, or you might make a lot of money. But I mean, I say this all the time. Most of my friends, and this ranges back from as soon as I got to college to now, most of my friends make more money than I do. But I truly wouldn't trade spots with them for anything, because I love what I do. I love what I do, and I'm blessed enough to be able to still have quality time with my family and friends, and life is good.
Well, that I mean, that's another thing I talk about, because we talk about careers. Obviously, as a business teacher, I talk careers with kids, and I always give them 3 criteria when they start looking at careers. I'm like, because I watched my mother and other family members just work long hours just to make money to provide for family, and there's nothing wrong with that. If you're trying to provide for your family, I get you, I understand. But and this is why I tell a lot of my high school kids, here's 3 criteria you need to think about. Is 1, is it legal? Let's start there. That's the foundation. Like, you shouldn't have to say that, but you know as I do. There's kids that are going to think of stuff and whatever.
Yep.
2, will it support the type of lifestyle you want? And when I say that, I'm like, how many kids, the house, like, is what you're thinking about doing going to support that? And then 3, are you going to enjoy it? Because I tell a lot of them, like, if you're miserable making money, what's the point?
Yep.
Like, if you have 1 or 2 days off and you're miserable the other 5 to 6, is that really worth it? My personal opinion's no. Theirs might be yes. I mean, everybody's built differently, but like I think those 3 criteria kind of hit the nail on the head, or whatever the analogy is. Just
yep.
So.
Well, that's just that. One of my real good friends makes easily $200,000 a year more than I make.
Ooh.
Easily, and he's got a lot of freedoms. But we were talking not too long ago. He was saying, Kurt, you could do what I'm doing and make this kind of money. And I asked him, I said, would I be able to keep coaching? And he goes, no, there's no way. I said, then there's no way I'd want to do it. Because why? Why buy a bigger house? Why have more retirement? Why have an extra car or a nicer car and not have that fulfillment of loving what you do.
Yeah.
You know, and I think way too many people fall into that trap of doing something, as you said, that they don't love, regardless of the money they make.
Yeah, it's just, and the other thing is you can't take it with you when you're gone. I mean, the Egyptians tried and they failed. So, I mean,
yes, they did.
so it's just stuff like that. Like we have a football player who loves just cooking, like
Yep.
absolutely, like he'll cook his family meals. Like, and we've had conversations this season like, why don't you go to culinary school and then get like a food truck
Yeah.
and start a business that way. Do what you love. Like, why not? Like, I'm not. I mean, because a food truck. I mean, and you're probably. I mean, you're like in food truck central there in California.
We are, yeah.
But like, it's a cheaper investment than it is trying to build a restaurant, just vastly.
Yep.
So why not start there? Like, and as a business teacher, I'll tell you, most restaurants lose money the first 2 to 5 years and go out of business. So why a food truck, a fraction of the cost to do the exact same thing, and you're mobile. Just like we've gotten completely away from football at this point, which is fantastic.
But I'm going to respectfully say we haven't, because
Yeah.
really we're having conversations. But and this is the first time you and I have really communicated, other than through Twitter or whatnot. But isn't that what coaching is?
Yeah.
It's getting to the heart of the person and talking about things. I had a young man who we do a leadership council with just before COVID. I had a meeting with some young men in my office here, and one of the now seniors, real quiet, real cerebral player, will probably go Ivy League, walk on somewhere and pay his dues. But an amazing young man, and he wouldn't leave my office. He was kind of standing in the doorway, and I said, without saying his name, "Do you need to talk?" He's like, "No, I'm good," but didn't step out and leave. Just kind of stood there. I said, "Hey, come sit down for a second." And we sat down for about an hour and a half and just talked about life. Long story short, there were no issues at home. There were no big red flags. He just needed to talk, and it was a great thing. I thought it was a good talk. I was driving home, and I got a text from him when I got home just saying, "Thank you so much, Coach. I really needed that." And I thought about it at practice earlier this week, and I said to him, I said, "Hey, we got to sit down and talk again." And he looked at me, and I said, "You remember our talk last spring?" He goes, "Oh, yeah." I said, "Nothing on my mind, but let's just sit down and talk again." And he was so excited about that.
Yeah.
So I think even though we did go off, that topic a little bit, I mean,
Oh yeah.
for me, life is all about relationships.
Oh yeah, exactly. Like I joke with our backup quarterback all the time to tell him to eat protein because he always looks undersized to me. I just give him crap. I said that to him earlier. He sent me a picture back of him eating like 15 cheese sticks, and I'm just like, son, that's not what I mean when I say protein.
That's fantastic.
I'm just like that. He's like, but there's like this amount of grams per like. That's not what I mean. He's like, I'm gonna have steak for dinner. I'm just like, Jesus, just stop. Just like, and I said that to our coaching staff, and they all just started laughing, and I'm just like, yeah, this is our backup quarterback right now. This is fantastic. I love that kid to death, but I'm just like, oh my god, that is. Yeah,
you've got to find some nickname to give him now, centered around mozzarella or cheese sticks.
I need to like, yeah. I mean, but he's one of my favorite kids. Like I did the 6 a.m. workouts last year. I was the coach that did that. He missed I think one all off season.
Yeah.
Before COVID hit, he walked there in snow one day. Just
I love that.
It's like that's part reason why I love the kid. Like, and he got really excited as the season went on because we were in basketball season, so he was doing basketball, and he was on the freshman team, and he was starting to body kids that were bigger than him because he's working out every day, so he's getting strong. So he's starting to like some of these skinny freshmen that are taller than him. He's just starting to body them because he's just putting the muscle to him.
Don't you love that when the players start to see the hard work come to fruition? Yeah.
Oh, he's like you see him figuring it out on the court. He's like, oh, I'm stronger than this kid. I can out muscle him. And it's just like, yeah. Now please make a layup.
That's fantastic. It ties in for me. I think about we're talking about culture a little bit. With our workouts right now, one of our young men that always runs the group that I have. had to come late. He had to go do some rehab for his knee. And one of my now juniors, we got out in the field, and even before I said to him, and I was going to call him out and say, hey, kind of get us started on the stretches, he just started right away. And I love that because he's just one of the young men that probably won't ever be captain. I could be wrong. May or may not ever start for us, but he's one of those young men, same thing, that just shows up to everything, works as hard as he can. And now I'm seeing, in addition to that continue, I'm seeing him become more vocal in who he is. And I absolutely love that. That's what it's all about.
Oh yeah, exactly. And it's the growth you see over players every year is fantastic. And that goes back to our first question is like, it sucks when the kids that move away, you can't see that in. I mean, you might get a text or video here and there because you've made an impact on them, but you don't get to see that in person. It kind of sucks. But the ones you do get to see, you cherish it. It's enjoyable. So, well, Coach, I appreciate you coming on. I'm gonna kind of wrap it up there. Because I think we could probably talk for hours, no problem. But I think both of our wives would probably not overly be happy about that. And so yeah, Coach, I appreciate it. Coach, what if somebody wants to get a hold of you? Is Twitter the best way? What is the best way to get a hold of you if somebody wants to reach out to you?
Yeah, without giving my phone number out to everyone right now, although I'll give it out to anyone on Twitter who asks privately. It's Coach Kurt Hines on Twitter and Instagram, and Facebook is just Kurt Hines. And often people will say, well, why not Coach Kurt Hines on Facebook? And too many of my high school friends would give me a hard time for that and bust my chops. But yeah, years ago, my wife would not give me a hard time, but she would say to me, she's like, you don't need to respond to everyone, who sends you a direct message or whatever. And like, I know I don't, but I choose to. And it's funny because sometimes people will be visiting in California and asked to meet up or whatever, and I'll meet up with anyone and everyone. And it's a humbling thing because, as I said, I am no different than anyone else. It's just someone who's been blessed with a platform, and I love what I do. So yeah, if anyone wants to connect or reach out, it's Coach Kurt Hines. That's my website. And then a buddy of mine and I do a podcast, For What It's Worth Coaching podcast with Coach Ty. He's a friend of mine who I met through church. So that's as
awesome,
easy as
Coach.
that.
So everybody, please check out Coach's podcast. And again, if you have any questions for Coach, please go ahead and reach out to him. Coach always gets back to me. Coach is a good dude. So, Coach, thank you again, and you stay safe, my friend.
You as well. Appreciate you.